I slipped from Alicia's room, which was just a few steps down the hall from my room, and headed for the stairs, shuddering as I passed the doorway to my decimated room. And as I passed, he crossed in front of me in the room, just parallel to me. I was just behind him, out of his peripheral vision as he slammed through my closet door and began tearing into my clothing. I froze with fear, and my eyes went wide as his jeering came out between grunts and heavy breathing. After I was sure I hadn't been noticed, I continued and went down the stairs. Each creak made me clench my teeth and eyes shut. I was absolutely sure he'd come down the stairs like a soaring bird and gut me like he did the pictures on the stairs. I moved across the glass littering the staircase as best I could, but too many times I pressed just a bit too hard down on a shard I did not see. The thumps and bumps and crashes I heard from my room made it impossible to concentrate. I dared not utter a single peep, even through the stinging pain in my feet. Fortunately, I was able to rub the shards from my feet as I was coming down to the bottom, because as I reached it, the flickering flames showed the shadow of an approaching person through the doorway. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and I moved into the dining room as if carried by some unnatural wind. I slid under the dining table, with my knees clobbering the wooden floor. The pain was nothing compared to my instinctual fear. The figure in the doorway turned into the dining room and stood, staring at the table. He'd heard me. I was frozen solid under that table, curled into a ball with my knees to my face, as I heard him walk up to and around the dining room table. The figure crossed where the flickering flares shone through the windows, and it cast an abysmal darkness across the white sheet. It wasn't well aligned. The sounds of wet, blood-covered feet on wood were coming from an area just in front of the shadow. He went into the kitchen and was rummaging through the cupboards and gorging himself on what little food he could find. Jelly, coffee grinds, sugar, salt, it all hit the floor as he continued to feast. As soon as I felt he'd gone far enough into the kitchen, I shot from under the table, then darted to the doorway. I fully expected to get a farm tool to my back, or to have the man upstairs slash me across the chest as I went next to the stairs, but when I crossed the dining room threshold and was just next to the front door, I could feel the wind on my back, like they were breathing on me, like they had swung at me, like they were just about to wring my neck. But I threw the front door open and exploded out of that house as if I too was ablaze. Neither of them followed. Now that I really think on it, I don't think they even raised a damn eyebrow at my behavior. The outside stunk of feces, human feces, and blood and burning, and they were everywhere. Every slave had taken to the field, engaging in numerous violent and disgusting activities. They were all scarred and torn, and some of them spoke to each other in that same foreign language. At that instant, the instant I noticed them, I heard my mother's scream cease. That bastard on top of her had struck her with something. He struggled to pull the object out, but finally wrenched it from her skull. He was killing her. He was killing my mother right in front of me. I wasn't thinking about the others or anything else. I scooped a rock off the ground and soared across the field to them. Before I brought the rock down onto his head, he looked backward, and suddenly I froze in place. His bottom lip was cut so badly that it seemed as if his mouth was made sideways. His eyes, they were missing. I roared with rage and smashed his skull over and over again. When I stopped hearing the cracking and crunching of bone and heard only the soft squish of flesh, I then felt the fatigue set in. I dropped the rock and looked to my mother. She was coughing up blood. Her nose was sliced in half. Her hair was matted with her own blood. Her eyes were swollen shut. She had been stabbed repeatedly in the chest and stomach. He was not violating her, at least not in the traditional sense. I cried, tears bursting from my eyes as the fires raged around us. She twitched and stirred and finally found the strength to grab at my hands. I took her weak, trembling hand in mine and attempted to apologize for failing to save her. But she stopped me, shushing and speaking over me. My eyes went wide as I tried to listen to her. I leaned as close to her as I could stand. "Get her back," she said sternly, her broken throat just managing to choke out the words and avoid falling into hysterical tears. I looked to where her other hand was pointing, deep into the wilderness surrounding our small refuge. That's where many of the slaves were heading. I looked back down at my mother. She was gone. Her jaw was left agape with exhaustion and pain, same as her swollen eyes. Fluid streamed from my face as I looked up at the slaves and screamed. I called them every name I could think of, and it never fazed them. Not even a little. Those bastards betrayed everything they knew, and for what? For the freedom to go back to being barbarians. For a little bit of some damn food they'd not been allowed to have. For the sexual perversion of a nigger wanting a white woman. I did not always agree with how Papa acted toward them, or anyone else for that matter, but if I'd known this was in my future, I'd most likely have helped him. Yes, I blame them. Their desires are what feed it and give it life. They didn't seem to care until I stood up and moved toward the wilderness. I was just trying to get a better look, but apparently that simple movement set them off, because as soon as I looked back at them, they were staring at me. Those bright eyes with such dark dots, such abysses in the skull of each man. Their eyes felt like fingers on my neck and daggers to my gut. I began toward the woods and away from their gaze, but they followed me with their empty eyes. At a distance, all I could make out in the fiery darkness was the whites against their dark skin as they stared me down. They must have been at least 20 in that field, and when I reached a certain distance away, they began toward me, farm tools in hand, rage or indifference on their faces. I couldn't tell if they were going into the wilderness or if they were coming after me. But I ran. I ran deep into the woods, tripping over logs and mounds in the earth. I didn't stop. For quite some time I didn't stop. My heart was beating through my chest and sweat caked my shirt. But then I heard them. I stopped for what must have been an entire minute, just listening and waiting and hoping I was wrong. I was not wrong. They were chasing me. I heard them coming up behind me, crushing twigs and hooting and hollering and shouting my name. "James," they screeched. I shook with fear. It felt like my very skin was ready to run without me. And so I began running again. This time I was audibly scared, grunting and panting in pained fatigue as I heard them closing in. Their calls and howls sounded so close, too close for comfort. And then it happened. Something flew past me and sunk deep into a tree trunk I passed. They began throwing things at me, the same sharp and burning tools they'd been brandishing near the barn. If I had any hope that perhaps they weren't after me before, I knew now. It was a definite that they were going to kill me or worse. I began pleading with them not to harm me. I told them that what they were doing was illegal, and I told them that they'd regret this when they had nowhere to live and no one to take care of them. At the time, I thought these comments important and potentially helpful. In hindsight, they were just the feverish ravings of a coward who had come face to face with his own mortality. There was a cavern up ahead suddenly. It was across a small stream and was naturally blended into the background. It was my only salvation. At the moment, I thanked the Lord for his blessing and for delivering me from danger. A farm scythe caught me straight through the left ankle. It was too perfect a throw. The blade sliced right into my ankle and bounced off the ground, twisting as I fell, and it sliced into my leg again. I slid to a crashing stop into the stream, and it showered my face with bloody water. They'd been here already. I crawled, splashing water and blood high into the air, making all the sounds I didn't want to for fear of being seen. I dragged my slashed leg to the entrance and pulled myself up to the wall till I could stand. I limped inside without looking back. If they were going to kill me, they'd have to hit me in the back now. But obviously, they had no problem with that.